The 911 call came from 2847 Willowbrook Lane at 6:23 a.m. on September 15th, 2024. A woman's voice, shaking and barely coherent, reported finding her husband dead in their home office. When paramedics arrived at the upscale suburban home in Charlotte, North Carolina, they found Michael Stevens slumped over his desk, a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. His wife, Catherine, stood in the doorway, still in her silk pajamas, claiming she had discovered his body after hearing a loud noise. What appeared to be a tragic suicide would soon unravel into something far more sinister. Hidden beneath Michael's keyboard, investigators found a USB drive containing thousands of documents, photographs, and financial records that would expose Catherine Stevens as someone entirely different from the devoted wife and mother she appeared to be. The perfect marriage that neighbors had envied for 12 years was built on a foundation of lies, fraud, and ultimately murder. The woman who called herself Catherine Stevens had been living under a stolen identity since 2009. Her real name was Angela Martinez, and she was wanted by federal authorities for embezzling $3 million from her previous employer in Miami. Michael Stevens had discovered his wife's true identity 3 days before his death and had been preparing to turn her in to authorities. When she silenced him forever, the investigation would reveal that Catherine had been systematically draining Michael's business accounts while building a new identity that would allow her to disappear once again. Her plan was nearly complete when Michael's unexpected discovery forced her to commit murder to protect the elaborate deception she had maintained for over a decade. But Catherine had made one crucial mistake. In her haste to stage Michael's suicide, she had overlooked the security cameras Michael had secretly installed throughout their home after becoming suspicious of his wife's behavior. The footage would capture not only the murder, but also Catherine's methodical cleanup and staging of the crime scene. The Stevens family lived in Eastover, Charlotte's most exclusive neighborhood, where $1 million homes sat on manicured lots behind wrought iron gates. Michael Stevens, 45, ran a successful financial consulting firm that served wealthy clients throughout the Carolinas. His business had grown steadily over 15 years, allowing the family to live in luxury with expensive cars, private school educations, and annual vacations to Europe. Catherine Stevens, 41, portrayed herself as the perfect corporate wife and devoted mother to their 2 children, Emma and Luke, aged 14 and 12. She volunteered for charitable organizations, hosted elaborate dinner parties, and maintained an active social media presence that showcased their seemingly ideal family life. Neighbors and friends viewed the Stevens marriage as a model of success and happiness. Michael had met Catherine in 2012 at a charity fundraiser in Charlotte, 3 years after she had moved to the city from Florida. She claimed to be a widow, whose husband had died in a car accident, leaving her with a substantial inheritance that she was looking to invest wisely. Her story of tragic loss and newfound independence had attracted Michael's attention and sympathy. The couple married after a year-long courtship, with Catherine seamlessly integrating into Charlotte's social elite. She joined the country club, enrolled their children in prestigious private schools, and established herself as a prominent figure in local charitable circles. Her past remained largely mysterious, which she explained as being too painful to discuss. Their Eastover home featured 6 bedrooms, a 3-car garage, and extensive security systems that Michael had upgraded several times over the years. The house served as a showcase for Catherine's interior design skills and their apparent financial success, hosting numerous social gatherings that reinforced their status in the community. On the evening of September 14th, 2024, Michael Stevens returned home from his office at 7:30 p.m., carrying a manila folder filled with documents he had been researching for 3 days. He had discovered financial irregularities in his business accounts and had been investigating potential fraud. His research had led him to information about his wife's true identity that would shatter their 12-year marriage. Catherine was preparing dinner in the kitchen when Michael confronted her with the evidence he had gathered. The hidden security cameras captured their heated discussion, though the audio was too distant to discern specific words. The confrontation lasted approximately 20 minutes before Michael retreated to his home office to make phone calls. At 10:47 p.m., security footage showed Catherine entering Michael's office carrying a .38 caliber revolver that she had removed from the bedroom safe. Michael was sitting at his desk with his back to the door, speaking on the phone with someone about his discoveries. Catherine approached him from behind and fired a single shot into the base of his skull, killing him instantly. The murder weapon belonged to Michael and had been purchased 3 years earlier for home protection. Catherine knew the combination to the bedroom safe and had easy access to the firearm. The close-range shot suggested she had been standing directly behind her husband when she pulled the trigger, catching him completely off guard. After the shooting, Catherine spent 43 minutes staging the scene to appear like a suicide. She placed the gun in Michael's right hand, positioned his finger on the trigger, and arranged his body to suggest he had shot himself while sitting at his desk. She also deleted several files from his computer and removed documents that contained evidence of her fraudulent activities. Catherine then called 911 at 6:23 a.m., claiming she had just discovered her husband's body after hearing a loud noise. She told the dispatcher that Michael had been working late and that she had fallen asleep in their bedroom. Her performance was convincing, displaying appropriate shock and grief over her husband's apparent suicide. First responders arrived at 6:31 a.m. to find Catherine in the front hallway, visibly shaken and crying. She explained that Michael had been under stress at work and had mentioned being depressed about business problems. Her story provided a plausible motive for suicide and initially convinced the responding officers that no crime had occurred. The crime scene appeared consistent with suicide at first glance. Michael was slumped over his desk with the gun in his right hand, and there were no obvious signs of struggle. However, the responding detective noted that the office door had been left open, which seemed unusual for someone committing suicide in a home with family members present. Catherine's behavior during the initial police interview raised subtle red flags for Detective James Rodriguez, who noticed inconsistencies in her timeline and her seemingly rehearsed responses to questions about Michael's state of mind. Her grief appeared genuine, but her answers were too polished for someone who had just discovered her husband's body. The medical examiner's preliminary examination revealed that the bullet's trajectory was inconsistent with a self-inflicted wound. The angle of entry suggested the shot had been fired from a position behind and slightly above the victim, making suicide highly unlikely. This discovery transformed the investigation from a routine suicide into a homicide case. Detective Rodriguez secured the scene and called for crime scene technicians to conduct a thorough investigation. He also requested a search warrant for the Stevens home and began treating Catherine as a potential suspect rather than a grieving widow. Her perfect performance was beginning to unravel under professional scrutiny. Catherine was asked to stay at a hotel while the investigation continued, ostensibly for her own comfort, but actually to prevent her from contaminating or destroying additional evidence. She complied willingly, maintaining her role as the shocked and cooperative widow while secretly planning her next moves. Detective James Rodriguez began his investigation by examining the Stevens family's financial records, which revealed significant irregularities in Michael's business accounts. Over the past 2 years, approximately $400,000 had been transferred to accounts controlled by Catherine, often in amounts just below the threshold that would trigger automatic reporting requirements. The detective discovered that Catherine had been using her access to Michael's business to create phantom consulting contracts and fake invoice payments. The money had been transferred to accounts she had opened using forged documents and false information. Her embezzlement scheme had been sophisticated and carefully designed to avoid detection. Rodriguez learned that Michael had recently hired a private investigator to look into his wife's background after becoming suspicious of her financial activities. The investigator had uncovered evidence that Catherine Stevens did not exist prior to 2009, and that her Social Security number belonged to a deceased woman from Ohio. The investigation revealed that Catherine's real name was Angela Martinez, and she was wanted by federal authorities for embezzling $3.2 million from Coastal Investment Group in Miami between 2007 and 2009. She had disappeared just before being arrested and had been living under stolen identities ever since. Security footage from Michael's hidden cameras provided crucial evidence of the murder. The cameras had been installed without Catherine's knowledge after Michael became suspicious of her behavior. The footage clearly showed Catherine shooting her husband and then staging the suicide scene over the course of nearly an hour. Rodriguez discovered that Catherine had been planning to disappear again, having already established new bank accounts and obtained forged identification documents. She had been gradually moving money out of Michael's accounts and had purchased a one-way ticket to Brazil under an assumed name, scheduled to depart 3 days after the murder. The detective's examination of Catherine's computer revealed extensive research into countries without extradition treaties, methods for changing physical appearance, and techniques for creating new identities. She had been preparing for her next disappearance for months. Viewing Michael's murder as necessary to protect her freedom. Phone records showed that Catherine had been in contact with document forgers and identity theft specialists in the weeks before the murder. She had paid over $50,000 for new identification documents and had arranged for plastic surgery consultations to alter her appearance once she reached her destination country. Rodriguez learned that Catherine had used her charity, work, and social connections to gather personal information about wealthy families in Charlotte. She had been conducting reconnaissance for potential future fraud schemes while maintaining her cover as a devoted wife and community volunteer. The investigation uncovered evidence that Catherine had poisoned Michael's food with small amounts of arsenic over several months, apparently testing whether she could kill him slowly without detection. The arsenic levels in his hair and fingernail samples indicated chronic poisoning that would have eventually been fatal if the gunshot had not killed him first. Financial forensics revealed that Catherine had been embezzling money from the children's college funds and had liquidated Michael's retirement accounts without his knowledge. She had forged his signature on numerous documents and had been systematically stealing his assets while maintaining the appearance of a successful marriage. The detective discovered that Catherine had murdered her previous husband in Miami in 2009, making his death appear to be a heart attack through the use of untraceable poisons. That murder had allowed her to disappear with his life insurance money and had funded her initial years in Charlotte while she established her new identity. Rodriguez found evidence that Catherine had been communicating with other fugitives through encrypted messaging services, sharing information about evading law enforcement and creating new identities. She was part of a network of criminals who helped each other maintain false identities and avoid capture. The investigation took a shocking turn when Detective Rodriguez discovered that Catherine Stevens was not just a fugitive embezzler, but was actually part of an international identity theft ring that had been operating for over a decade. FBI Special Agent Belisa Thompson joined the investigation and revealed that Catherine was connected to at least 12 other murders across 4 states. The most disturbing revelation came when investigators found evidence that Catherine had been farming out her children, Emma and Luke, to help her gather intelligence on wealthy families. The children had been unknowingly providing their mother with information about their classmates' families, including financial details, security systems, and travel schedules that Catherine used to target potential victims. Further investigation revealed that the children were not actually Catherine's biological offspring. DNA testing proved that Emma and Luke had been kidnapped from a family in Texas in 2010, and their memories had been systematically manipulated through psychological conditioning and drugs to make them believe Catherine was their mother. The FBI discovered that Catherine's real identity was even more complex than initially believed. She was actually Maria Volkov, a Russian intelligence operative who had been trained in identity theft, financial fraud, and assassination techniques. Her criminal activities in the United States were part of a broader espionage operation designed to infiltrate and destabilize American financial institutions. Agent Thompson revealed that Catherine had been operating as a sleeper agent for foreign intelligence services, using her various identities to gather sensitive information about American business leaders and government officials. Her marriage to Michael Stevens had been a strategic move to gain access to his wealthy clients and their financial information. The investigation uncovered evidence that Catherine had been documenting and photographing sensitive financial documents from Michael's clients, transmitting this information to handlers overseas through encrypted communication channels. Her volunteer work and social activities had been covers for extensive intelligence gathering operations. Most shocking of all, investigators discovered that Michael Stevens had not stumbled upon his wife's identity by accident. He had been working as an undercover FBI informant for 6 months, gathering evidence about Catherine's activities as part of a larger counterintelligence operation. His murder had been orchestrated to prevent him from exposing the spy ring. The FBI revealed that they had been tracking Catherine for 3 years as part of Operation Phantom Wife, a counterintelligence investigation into foreign agents using marriage and family relationships to infiltrate American society. Michael's death had disrupted their carefully planned operation to roll up the entire network. Further analysis showed that Catherine had been planning to kill Michael regardless of whether he discovered her identity. Intelligence intercepts indicated that she had received orders from her handlers to eliminate him and extract valuable information from his client files before disappearing to a safe haven country. The investigation revealed that Catherine's plastic surgery consultations were not for changing her appearance to avoid capture, but to restore her original Russian features so she could safely return to her home country. She had been living under deep cover for so long that extensive surgery was required to resume her true identity. The most chilling discovery came when agents found Catherine's insurance policy, a detailed file containing compromising information about dozens of prominent American political and business leaders. She had been collecting blackmail material for years, creating a network of influence that extended into the highest levels of government and industry. Agent Thompson discovered that the identity theft ring had been responsible for over $500 million in financial crimes across the United States, with Catherine serving as one of their most successful operatives. Her ability to maintain long-term cover identities while conducting both criminal and espionage activities had made her extremely valuable to her foreign handlers. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of North Carolina filed federal charges against Catherine Stevens, Angela Martinez Maria Volkov on October 20, 2024. The charges included first-degree murder, espionage, identity theft, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit acts of terrorism. Federal prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty for the murder charges. Catherine was arrested at Charlotte Douglas International Airport as she attempted to board a flight to Mexico using her latest forged identity. FBI agents had been tracking her movements since discovering the security footage of Michael's murder. She was carrying over $200,000 in cash and multiple sets of identification documents. The federal indictment was unsealed simultaneously with arrests in 7 other states. As FBI agents rolled up the entire identity theft and espionage network, 12 other individuals were charged with conspiracy, espionage, and various financial crimes. Related to their roles in the international criminal organization, Catherine hired prominent defense attorney Robert Harrison, who attempted to negotiate a plea agreement in exchange for information about foreign intelligence operations. However, prosecutors refused to consider any deal that would allow her to avoid the death penalty for Michael's murder and the kidnapping of the children. The trial began on March 15, 2025, with extensive security measures due to the national security implications of the case. The prosecution's opening statement characterized Catherine as a dangerous foreign agent who had infiltrated American society to commit crimes against national security while murdering innocent victims. Prosecutor Jennifer Walsh presented evidence of Catherine's multiple identities, her systematic embezzlement activities, and a cold-blooded murder of Michael Stevens. The security camera footage of the murder was played for the jury, showing Catherine's calculated execution of her husband and her methodical staging of the suicide scene. FBI Agent Thompson testified about the broader espionage investigation and Catherine's role in gathering intelligence on American business and political leaders. Her testimony revealed the scope of the foreign intelligence operation and the national security damage caused by Catherine's activities. The most dramatic testimony came from Emma and Luke Stevens, who learned during the trial that they had been kidnapped children and that Catherine was not their biological mother. Their testimony about the psychological manipulation they had endured provided crucial evidence of Catherine's ruthless methods. Expert witnesses testified about the sophisticated nature of Catherine's identity theft schemes and the advanced techniques. She used to maintain multiple false identities simultaneously. The testimony established the premeditated nature of her crimes and her extensive training in deception and fraud. The defense strategy focused on arguing that Catherine had been coerced by foreign intelligence handlers and that her actions were the result of threats against her life. Defense psychiatrists testified about the psychological effects of deep cover operations and claimed Catherine suffered from dissociative identity disorder. The prosecution countered with evidence showing Catherine's willing participation in criminal activities and her leadership role in the identity theft network. Financial records demonstrated that she had profited substantially from her crimes and had acted out of greed rather than coercion. After 8 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for 5 days before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. The evidence of premeditated murder, espionage, and the systematic victimization of innocent families convinced jurors that Catherine posed an ongoing threat to national security and public safety. Judge Patricia Anderson sentenced Catherine to death for the murder of Michael Stevens and multiple life sentences for the espionage and identity theft charges. The sentence reflected the unprecedented nature of her crimes and the threat she posed to American security interests. The Catherine Stevens case fundamentally changed how federal authorities investigate and prosecute cases involving foreign intelligence operations disguised as domestic crimes. The investigation led to enhanced screening procedures for identity, document fraud, and new protocols for detecting long-term sleeper agents. Catherine Stevens was transferred to federal death row at FMC Carswell in Texas, where she awaits execution while her appeals proceed through the federal court system. Her conviction effectively dismantled an international criminal network and prevented ongoing intelligence gathering operations against American interests. The 2 kidnapped children, Emma and Luke, were reunited with their biological families in Texas after extensive psychological counseling and rehabilitation. They continue to receive support services for the trauma they experienced and the complex process of reclaiming their true identities. Michael Stevens was posthumously honored by the FBI for his service as an undercover informant and his sacrifice. in the fight against foreign intelligence operations. His cooperation with federal authorities helped expose a significant threat to national security and prevented additional crimes against American citizens. The case prompted congressional hearings on foreign intelligence operations and led to increased funding for counterintelligence activities. New legislation provided enhanced penalties for espionage-related crimes and established additional protections for undercover informants working in national security investigations. Federal authorities used information from Catherine's case to identify and investigate similar operations in other countries, leading to international cooperation agreements for combating transnational identity theft and espionage networks. The case became a model for prosecuting complex national security crimes. The investigation revealed that dozens of other foreign agents may be operating under deep cover in American communities, using marriage and family relationships to gather intelligence and commit financial crimes. Enhanced screening procedures and community awareness programs were implemented to detect these threats. Catherine's story demonstrates how foreign intelligence services exploit American openness and trust to place operatives in positions where they can cause maximum damage to national security interests. Her case continues to influence counterintelligence training and threat assessment procedures. The question remains how many other sleeper agents may be living among us, using stolen identities and fabricated relationships to gather intelligence and commit crimes against American interests. Catherine Stevens' case serves as a reminder that the greatest threats often come from those who appear most trustworthy. Her elaborate deception ultimately failed because of one man's courage in investigating suspicious activity and cooperating with federal authorities. Michael Stevens' sacrifice helped protect countless other potential victims and exposed a significant threat to whom American security that continues to influence law enforcement efforts today.